a look at what's been happening in the news legally now with our good friend Joseph Kotrie-Monson, a lawyer and broadcaster, an all-round good friend of the show. Joseph, thank you so much for joining me today. As I said, Russian news has kind of knocked everything off the front pages. You know, one of the things I was going to cover is Windrush, because of course I have a personal investment in that, my mother being one of the Windrush generation, and I don't know if do you know anything about what's happening legally?
I have to say, Windrush, as a citizen of this country who's benefited from the growth post-war of all of those people who watched like Pathé News adverts in their local cinemas in Jamaica and Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago, and they came to the UK, and we owe them our post-war development. It's actually an issue that actually affects everybody, and it's something that affects you. No doubt, I can't speak for example, the Afro-Caribbean community in the UK, of course, but I can say this: the gratitude that goes out to those people who helped us, like the Irish, rebuild post-war Britain, and therefore the anger that many people rightly have in the context of that abuse. I think that's an issue that's relevant to all of us who have some pride or claim to have some pride in what this country is about.
There's some great pro bono legals being involved in fighting, we should say, the deportation. What happens with some of those people who are deported? It was the UK immigration services who lost track of their papers, who shredded them up until fairly recently as 2010, and then turn around to people who've contributed to the National Health Service and everything else. You're not British, we're going to deport you. There's a great legal teams being involved in fighting that.
It's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Garden Court Chambers doing some wonderful work on it. Some of the other chambers, I believe, Doughty Street involved. I feel guilty that I don't know the solicitors firm to mention. These people are heroes. And Trisha, the thing that makes me so frustrated is these are exactly the same people that the government is targeting now in its narrative, saying that they're out of touch lefty lawyers, do-gooders who are stopping the British people get what they want in exchange for fabulous money. Newsflash, Trisha, we're on the news. There's no fabulous money. There's no fabulous money. These are committed people in believing what many of us in this country still believe, and that's that you help your neighbour. And who is your neighbour? A neighbour is a stranger who needs your help.
Yeah. And as you said, these people put, like my mum, National Health Service, that got them on their feet, the transport services, all of those services. Thank you for that, Joseph. The other thing I want to look at is tech companies. A complete change of subject, but tech companies will no longer be able to stonewall bereaved families whose children have died after accessing social media. When you think about Molly Russel, who was 14 years of age, who took her own life, her families fought for, was it 6 years to get information from Meta and Pinterest to try to establish what their daughter viewed online. There are now legal forces put in place to stop them stonewalling.
Yeah, online safety bill. We've heard a lot about it, haven't we? Do you remember there were going to be initially criminal consequences for social media companies who didn't remove hateful or damaging material online? That's all been watered down typically. I'd like to say that this, however, is an important first step. The idea that children, we're talking about impressionable children, some of whom, it's debatable really whether given the ills of social media, whether they should even be allowed to access it. But nevertheless, they are targeted. They are targeted by this new alien that we didn't know about 10 or 20 years ago, unless you were into computer science or advanced maths, algorithms. And this is basically a program that decides what to give you in order to keep you on the app. TikTok's great at it. Instagram's great at it. Facebook's great at it. And guess what? They don't want to give up that information even to even to grieving families as to what these children may have seen before, sadly, tragically, they took their own lives. And they certainly don't want to give them the secret source. They don't want to give up the way that algorithm works. They've used these excuses, Trisha. Oh, data protection. Do you remember back in the day, people, you'd ask for some information. Oh, I can't do that. Data protection.
No.
You know what? It's the same absolute rubbish. There's no data protection responsibilities to the deceased. The parents have a right to see this material. But actually, this is just part of it's a symbolic and headline grabbing, there's a big House of Lords minister or campaigner, very good woman who's launched this campaign, been at the forefront of it. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, but it doesn't go nearly far enough, Trisha.
Oh, well, so how far? I mean, we're talking about massive multinationals. I mean, massive. How far can British law go to protecting children? Are they literally having to take on America, or can you just can Britain have a legal framework that prevents things that might happen in the US from happening in the UK? Can we still do that?
Yeah, absolutely, because these are companies that operate and make profit in the UK. Google, Facebook, Instagram, just their ad revenue alone here is in the many, many billions. These are organizations that if our politicians had the guts to regulate, instead of being gutless and making big announcements about online safety and then just saying, oh, and we're going to do online safety, but in very specific circumstances relating to the deceased. It seems very targeted, and it is, Trisha. But what we have instead is a bill that only deals with the most obvious and heart-wrenching part of the problem, not the fact that there is an electronic program that is written with the sole aim of keeping our children glued, either happy, sad, morose, depressed, in whatever state they want our kids on these computers and these devices.
To sell adverts, basically.
Absolutely. They measure it by the hour, and they want these kids in for several hours. They don't care whether they're happy. They don't care whether they're sad. They don't care whether it's sexualized. Government needs to regulate and do so aggressively. And that means these companies need to disclose the algorithms to not just the parents of deceased children who've seen them, but to all parents, to all citizens.
But will parents have to actually go to court in order to get this? And are you saying it's only if your child, God forbid, and I was looking, it's not just one case, there have been several cases where a child has taken their own life. Is it only in those situations, or can any parent at any time, if they're becoming concerned, because there's this hacker in the United States, this 24-year-old hacker, his mum, who was a lawyer, said that they didn't realize that her son was extorting money and threatening people and what have you. So does it mean any parent who's worried about their child's mental health could legally... No. You can't legally say to these companies, I want to know what my child's looking at.
No, and the way in which you can have it is in the context of a coroner's request.
Oh, wow.
In an inquest after a death. There's going to be some kind of faster track mechanism.
But
the reality is
ridiculous. It's like you have to wait until the unthinkable happens before you can find out what your child's looking at. If your child is mentally ill or in turmoil, you can't.
Yeah, and even if it's not something that results in some extreme mental illness or, God forbid, self-harm or whatever, we're actually talking about something that parents have a right to know regardless, because these are algorithms that are shaping our children. Children are being encouraged, they are set up in such ways, almost like games to attract children. TikTok is a program for kids. And it's got an algorithm that is crudely written to create addiction, and they don't care about doing it through the joy of winning or beating the next level on a computer game. Mm-hmm. They're doing it through getting you transfixed, whether that's happy, sad, desperate, or depressed. And it's time that these social media companies, and we get angry with our politicians who have the power to do it, instead of just grandstanding on specific things, saying this is a great victory, when it's progress, but nothing like a great victory in the total context. We as citizens need to be angry with our politicians because they have the power to get these social media companies to open up their books.
Joseph, I love talking to you every week, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about in the future. Joseph Kotrie-Monson there, looking at the week in legal news.